Good morning. Thank you for joining us today for this important conversation. Gun violence is really an important topic in our city. We had a rough weekend this weekend, and it just sort of highlights the importance of a discussion around how we can make our community safe, and that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to hand it over right now to the mayor.
Yes, thank you, Will. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mayor Tashara Jones, and I'm honored to have this distinguished panel of attendees around me so we can have an honest and open discussion about tools that we need to help keep our city safer, as well as lifting up the voices of people who have been directly impacted by gun violence, my family included. As you well know, has been no stranger to losing loved ones to gun violence. The story just a couple of weeks ago about the 7-year-old who accidentally shot himself with his grandfather's gun was actually my cousin. So we are preparing to memorialize him tomorrow, as well as dealing with the fallout of having another justice-involved person in our family. So I would ask that as you continue about your day, please take a moment to keep my family in prayer as we navigate this difficult situation. We're here to, when I ran for mayor, I wanted to make sure that we did not shy away from the difficult conversations, and today is one of them. And I'm honored to be here with people who are going to share their experiences, as well as we'll talk about potential solutions, because even though the Missouri legislature has passed laws that make it difficult for us, and sometimes we feel like we're fighting with one hand behind our back, but we are going to fight with the hand that we have free. So I look forward to this discussion, and I'll pass it back to Will to introduce our panelists.
Thank you, and I should have introduced myself. I'm Will Pinckney, the Director of the Office of Violence Prevention here in the city of St. Louis. I do want to, before we start introducing everyone, we do have someone here to welcome us from Friendly Temple Church.
Good morning, good people. Good morning. I am Felicia Pulliam. It is both my honor and pleasure to be here representing Friendly Temple on behalf of our Bishop, Michael Fulton Jones, our executive leadership team, and of course our congregation. Welcome. Welcome. We are happy to host this very critical conversation in furtherance of public safety for our community. And of course, we support our mayor and all of her initiatives. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. So we're going to go around the table real quickly and have our participants and panelists introduce themselves. Just please give your name and your affiliation. We'll start to my right.
Good morning, everyone. Shameen Clark Hubbard, Alder Lady for the 10th Ward in the city of St. Louis.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Isabella Mashburn, and I'm here with Students Demand Action.
Good morning. I'm Alicia Sanye, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Alderwoman of the 7th Ward in the city of St. Louis.
Good morning, Robert Tracy, Police Commissioner, St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department.
Good morning. Tashara Jones, intern in the mayor's office.
Jason Watson, Senior VP of Engagement with Mission St. Louis.
Erica Jones. I am the founder of the Voiceless ST.
I'm Daniela Velasquez, and I'm Alderwoman for the 6th Ward.
I'm Lando Vale. I work Safe Streets, Safe Neighborhoods with OVP.
Thank you. So we're going to jump right in. And our first question, and I'm going to start with Orlando. How do we see the trauma of gun violence reflected in our communities?
You say the trauma of gun violence. Shit, well, I was shot 2 times. One time when I was 14, one time when I was 20. And it hurts everybody. It don't just hurt one person. You know, it's a community effort for the most part. And it's contagious because what we see is what we do, you know, product of our environment.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
when we're dealing with trauma, trauma just doesn't, like you said, Orlando, doesn't just impact the person that is actually hit with gun violence. It also impacts the family. I, such as myself, it impacts my grandchild who is left without a mother. It also impacts their siblings. So when we're dealing with trauma, it's just not within one part. It also affects the community. There's lost loved ones, friends, family members, and there are also people that they work with in their surrounding areas. So when it's just dealing with just one person being affected, it's not just one. So it needs more than just one advocate. We need more than just one avenue when it comes to gun violence.
Jason?
Gun violence just heightens your senses. I feel like some of what we see and the trauma impacted on individuals is the ability to have to see the person who probably inflicted that harm walking through your neighborhood. And you're expected to respond in an emotionally stable way. And that's just not human. So I think some of what we see is the impact of violence heightens our senses to violence. So we feel like if I'm gonna be met with extreme violence, I'm gonna approach things with extreme violence. And that's why we see what we see. So when blood is shed, you feel like, I want my lick back. So when it's time to de-escalate something, and you're trying to get somebody to understand, like getting your lick back ain't gonna change nothing, they're really trying to balance the emotions that they feel as they kind of wrestle through the trauma. So I think that continues and perpetuates the violence that we see.
Thank you. Bella?
Hello. So I know from a student perspective that people are afraid to go to school because of the effects of gun violence have had on people. I know personally a lot of my friends are terrified to go out. We're scared to get involved in the community because a lot of times that we're too scared to go anywhere and to do things because we're worried about the effects that guns will have on us. And yeah.
And I'm going to let our other panelists, if they feel they want to share an answer to that, but I'll add this question. How do Missouri's weak gun laws contribute to violence in our city? And we'll start with Alderwoman.
Well, we know that they, to Mayor's point earlier, some of the words she had, they tie one hand, right? And so we are out here trying to do the best we can with the one hand we have, and that's where good leadership comes into play. And I'll say also that gun violence and the impact it has not only affects, to Orlando's point, the person, the victim who experienced it, but their families, their communities. It affects you financially. There's different downfalls and pitfalls from gun violence that I think people don't talk about, but they really do impact moving on in your space. And that's why, to my sister's point, it takes so many people and so many entities, no one person change this. That's why I love Mayor Jones' outlook on
our experience in society, which is, just a sense of safety and security that is definitely lacking.
Chief?
Thank you, and thanks for putting this together because it's such an important topic, especially with gun violence and the trauma that we talked about, the trauma that happens to victims, the trauma that happens to families, trauma that happens to kids that see that type of trauma and it affects their learning ability, then certainly the cycle starts all over. So it's not just coming from a policing end, but I am the police, and the thing is, I have a job to do, and we're going to do everything that we can as far as leveraging technology, making the best cases. If you're doing things illegally with a firearm, making sure we bring the best charges forward. We're making sure we bring the best charges forward, working with the criminal justice system to get people out there that have really abused their privilege of carrying a firearm. That being said, things like this and trying to get the conversation going for reasonable gun laws, reasonable. I've never worked in a city where it wasn't prohibited for juveniles to carry firearms. We just talked about a mother trying to make sure that there's some regulation in place that couldn't get help because of the gun laws. There has to be some reasonableness. And we really should be starting. We're doing some things with the administration and with the Board of Alders, and we're putting things in ordinances. That's a start. And we're going to be putting more things as this conversation goes on that the mayor and the Board of Alders have all discussed that are really important today. I'll let them get into it, and then I'll make comment. But the thing is, when we're doing these things, get the conversation going. There are things that we can do. There are things that we're going to continue to do in the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. work with the people that get involved in gun violence, with the group violence intervention, doing the calls, try to help get the people out of the violence, give them choices. But at the end of the day, the carrot and the stick, if they're going to cause carnage or you're going to do shootings that harm our community, we're going to make arrests and we're going to make sure that they're not back in the community for a very long time. There's two ways to do it. We'll get you help, but you know what? At the end of the day, you got to there are some laws that are still in place and some new ones we're introducing that we will leverage against those that are causing harm in our community. But we're going to try to, before we get to that, try to mitigate it, try to get help. But at the end of the day, we got to keep this community safe.
Thanks, Chief. And I would probably add that when we talked about trauma before, think about, when we said it affects everyone, that includes officers who have to repeatedly respond to violent incidents, and so their wellness is important as well. Alderwoman Velasquez.
Thank you. Well, I do want to echo what Mayor Jones and Chief Tracy and my colleagues, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard and Alderwoman Saulnier, said about us working together as a community. So thank you all for being here. I think when it comes to the state law, it's twofold. Our responsibility, of course, is to our community and our people here and doing the things that we can here as well. But I think that the region and St. Louis needs to have its wide open to these gun laws that are currently unreasonable in the state if we're going to talk honestly and authentically about gun violence as a problem and then tie one hand back. And so I think it's important that we do all that we can at the Board of Aldermen and all that we can in our community, but that we also hold our state leaders accountable to what they've done so far.
Thank you. I want to start to talk about sort of what are we doing, right? Because we can highlight the issues, but what are some solutions? So what are some unique tools beyond police and gun laws being used to address gun violence in our city today? I'll go to Jason.
Unique, I think, number one is just, I've been thinking a lot about using the arts. I know some of what we see in the violence that we see in the communities is expressed in music. However, music is a way for you to communicate what those experiences are. And I think also it gives an avenue for individuals to create conversation around why you feel these particular ways. Because even when we start to talk about laws and the critical thinking of how we want to come about with these laws, I have to think about individuals who feel like they have a need to protect themselves because of the circumstance that they in. Often through their music, they expressing why they feel that need, the circumstances that they are in. So sometimes it's about creating an opportunity for conversation to address, like, why do you feel this way? Because some of what we see are individuals who are scared. You know, if you ever have felt the need to have to carry a gun, that's a whole nother feeling. When you're 12, 13 years old, you hear a 13-year-old talking about shooting somebody. You ask him, why you feel the need to carry a gun? You're like, I might get shot when I walk to the store. So we got conversations that I think need to be had because we need to understand why they feel the pain that they feel and the need to have to protect themselves in that way at that age. Because I was carrying a gun at 11 years old because I felt like I had to. So when you start to understand those things and create opportunities for people to express themselves, it allows you to address and deal with some of the issues that they're facing.
And that's some of the work that Mission St. Louis does. I know we don't have anyone from Story Stitches here. They do a lot of podcasting and create opportunities for young people to have these conversations so that they can express those feelings in a controlled environment. Ms. Erica?
As my brother Jason said, eloquently put it, I asked, with me working in the field, we're working with youth ages 12 to 16 or 12 to 18, what can we do as a community, you know, to give them a safer space, a space for them? And they said that there is nothing in our cities that they can get involved with that has nothing to them either being racially profiled, discriminated against, or made to feel like they are part of something else. So our children, our youth, we need more in the community to give them a safe space to go and be able to express themselves. Also, with the program that I have, it's a follow-up behind it. It's called Reach Me, and it's where we do teen talk, where young people can sit down with their parents and express different things that they have going on with them, whether it's school bullying, whether it's them having trouble with them within themselves. But the parent actually has to sit there and listen to what it is that they're feeling. And we found out that kids were being bullied. We found out that kids were carrying guns to school. So that is a heavy burden on them when you don't even know how to start the conversation of how was your day? What's going on with you today? How can I approach? We gotta first be able to talk to our children. And if we can't talk to our children, then they're not gonna talk to you. They're gonna talk to somebody like me. They're gonna talk to somebody like Jason. They're gonna talk to somebody like Orlando. They're not gonna talk to anyone else because they feel like judgment is gonna be passed, or they're gonna be put in a situation of I don't know if everybody in here is a parent, but some of the things that we did as a youth, our children is doing twice as worse. So how do we have a conversation with them? How do we get them to understand that we are here, we love you, positivity? We also have to do that with the people that's within our community. And if there is barely resources for these young people to be able to voice what's going on with them, we in trouble. We've been in trouble. And it's going to continue to be trouble until we address inside the household, talk with them, and also put those resources for our youth to have somewhere to go when they're in trouble.
I'm so glad, Erica, that you brought up our young people because I feel like the Juneteenth shooting was a pivotal moment of them crying out saying, hey, we need some help here. And after that shooting, we pulled together community organizations. We also pulled together the kids, about a room of about 40 to 50 kids, and asked them what they wanted to see, what made them safe, what kinds of things could the city help them or bring resources to the table to help make them safe. And we've been able to do that since then. Every weekend, we've had our rec centers open late hours. Several young people have taken advantage of that. We've had downtown programming in partnership with other organizations like the Mental Health Board and the Violence Prevention Commission. But I also realize that we need to continue to keep this going. It can't just be that we respond during the summer and then when they go back to school that it falls off. So we will be continuing that programming with them because we're realizing, just like you're peeling back the layers of an onion, you encounter the child, but then as you start talking to them, you start figuring out that there are more issues going on with them and their family. And so it reminds me of an African proverb that that a child that does not feel embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And so we don't want our children to burn our village down. We have to embrace them and make them feel welcome, make them feel safe, give them opportunities to have fun in a safe environment, let them feel like their input is welcome. And I think that will start to make a difference.
And I just would highlight, so Ms. Erica, she didn't mention it, but she also creates a space because you want to help young people, but you also have to help their family. You can't disconnect them from one another. And she does a great job of holding space for people who are survivors and their families to be with like-minded people. We want to talk about that real quick.
Every year, I give a dinner for mothers and fathers to come together and have a time to get away. And this year is my 6th-year anniversary, and it's called Voice of the Voiceless, STL, and it is a space for mothers like myself who have lost children to gun violence to come together and be around other mothers and fathers who also have lost children to gun violence. It's a space where it's entertainment, it's dinner provided, and it's just us being able to be with people that understand our language, because we definitely have a certain language. There is no word when a mother has lost a child to violence. It's not a word. But there is a word when a woman has lost a husband, or when a man has lost a wife, but there's no word when a mother has lost a child. And that's the biggest impact. I'm grateful that one of my mothers is actually in the building. She also has an organization called Healing Hearts. So that's part of the support groups that is for us, that is out here, because it's not many. And the services are free. You don't have to pay for anything. These services are free. But we need more assistance, like from our mayor's support, from other aldermen from different parts of the map to come in and say, hey, how can we help y'all continue the work that you do within the community? I know Ms. Shamim Hubbard's been there from the beginning, and I love her to death. So we need those people to continue to support us. Mayor, we need you to continue to be there for us and support us. Jason came out the woodwork, so he's been there from the beginning too. Mr. Pickney, we appreciate this platform because a lot of us don't have it. And we just appreciate that when we have these platforms, that we are recognized and that people see us, because they don't see us. They don't see the mothers that hurt. They don't see the fathers that hurt. They only see the trauma that was in that those bullets did to our family. That's it.
Bella, you want to add something about tools?
So I know that one of the things that a lot of people that I've talked to or my friends just want things to do and want places to be able to go, to feel safe, and to not be about being shot wherever you go. And I think some of the tools that I know my friends have used is I've had a lot of people, we've been talking about advocacy like this and just speaking up about things and issues and finding spaces where we can talk about things that normally we maybe wouldn't want to talk about. And there's been a lot of support just from the community too, I feel like, events like this where people are actually talking about it instead of just ignoring that things are happening. So, yeah.
Thank you, Bella. Orlando, you want to add any comments here?
Well, for me, it started with the kids in the schools, because like when I was real young, I used to get bad grades, and it made me act out. So, you know, more people we have in the schools, like grief counselors, like Ryan and Sandra and them down in Mission St. Louis, they do a good job with that. You know what I'm saying? Just like good people being in your corner. So,
I mean, it sounds like the common thing is the unique tool is really listening and creating a space for conversation. And I know when we've talked to young people, they don't always feel that just because you create a space, you're actually listening. And adults do more talking, right, in those spaces than listening, right? Thank you. So let's go to our last question. You know, we talk about addressing gun violence. Sometimes we have this false choice people tend to give, but it does really require a balance, right? Intervention, enforcement. However, from the enforcement side, let's think about what most effective strategies and how could stronger gun laws make that job easier? So we'll go to the chief.
Well, just regulation in itself starts to bring down the number of guns that people can carry legally. And when you start doing that, that starts to give somewhat of a confidence in other places that I've been in, that where over time, the perception that you have to carry that gun to keep safe, that's why that's sometimes a decision where young people saying, if I don't have a gun, I can't protect myself. So moving this way in some type of regulation and some of the things that we're doing where right now we're looking at concealed carry. If you do not have a concealed carry permit, you will not be able to carry as a juvenile or as an adult in the city of St. Louis. And then we're going to be putting out, we're going to put out a campaign, an educational campaign that the law is changing because of this ordinance. And then we're going to make sure that we have good policy in place and then how we go about it. We don't want to go out and enforce it right away. We want to educate the community. But that's going to be a start. It's not like we haven't approached people with firearms where they're not committing other crimes. We've made close to almost 900 arrested individuals that had an illegal firearm so far this year. So these are the things that we can do. And then my job is to come in and use the strategies where we look at the people with the highest propensity for violence. And those are the individuals that are basically the trigger pullers. And with ShotSpotter and then matching shell casings and making sure that we use NIBIN to ATF and Crime Gun Intelligence Center, we're able to identify the individuals that have that highest propensity of violence, both for being an offender and also a victim. The ones that are in this, they're also going to be a victim. So the way I look at it is to keep people safe and to do it. And then if I can keep people safe, then we're going to be looking at like group violence intervention. We're going to be working with all the groups that are being seen, and we are aware, and we want to leverage that, starting with the kids doing juvenile custom notifications, where you go to the families when the trauma happens for a young person that's carrying a firearm, might be shot or do a shooting. What else is going on in that family? And we might have to help the whole family because it's going to be a wraparound services, and those for the young adults get them in a room, find out what's going on, do group violence intervention, do call-ins, do custom notifications to find out what's going on, try to get them out of that life of crime, give them choices. And over time, that has worked in other areas. And this is just another layered approach that it's not all about enforcement, but certainly it's a big part, enforcement, but we'd rather hit it from the other angle, but then we also know it's necessary if those who do not want to come along, but we're going to try to do choices. It doesn't happen overnight, but with good, sensible gun laws, prosecution of individuals that do carry illegal firearms, that has to happen. People that are committing violent crimes with firearms, we got to make sure that they're fairly prosecuted, and it has to be addressed. And I think patterns and trends and identifying those individuals to get them help first, and if they don't want to take the help, we got to make sure they're not causing any more harm to the community. I could take over this whole thing and speak for hours about this crime strategy, but that wouldn't be fair to everybody else's voice. That would be for another time. But that's a high-level view and how we look at it. We do it with compassion and empathy because why are people in these places and why are they feeling the way they do? We have to look at it that way, and we certainly do it. And then if we're not, I'm going to educate my officers to make sure we continue to do that. So thank you.
Thanks, Chief. You want to go on? Anything on this? How do stronger gun laws help with enforcement?
Sure. I mean, I think that, you know, we're at the board, we want to do, at least I'll use my eyes, but I see my colleagues here, we want to do everything that we can within our, you know, within our lane and within the confines of what we can do at the city to give the police department the tools and resources it needs in fighting crime. And I think we also have this continuing responsibility to hear from people like Miss Erica in Orlando and Jason on different ways that we can have collaborations and we can fund some of those, you know, initiatives that we not may be able to see the long-term effect of what producing art can do for a child, but it changes their life, right? So I think it's sort of this twofold approach.
Thank you. Alderwoman Sonia?
Yeah, I think enforcement, you know, like you said, I think it's important that we have these conversations in a holistic way. Thinking about the fact that a lot of the people, like the chief said, a lot of the people who are the offenders are also the victims. And so making sure that we are thinking about the enforcement of crisis response, someone that can respond when a situation is beginning to escalate before it gets to that point, about the enforcement of mental health resources that help us deal with the PTSD and the trauma that comes with being a victim of violence, being in a situation where maybe you know someone that's been a part of the criminal justice system, growing up in a community where gunshots are as normal as lullabies at night, making sure that you have mental health resources to help people not normalize these things, not internalize these things, and to work through the trauma. And then also supportive reentry. If in a lot of cases people who are the offenders are also the victims, what are we doing when people do, you know, if they are prosecuted and they get out, what types of supports are we putting in place? What resources are we giving so that they're not put back in a situation where for some reason violence is the option or is, you know, is the choice that they go with in that moment. So I think when you're talking about enforcement, it is, you know, important to just have the conversation holistically, to be honest about some of the factors that we know that play key roles, like race and class, that create communities where, you know, sometimes people feel like these are their only choices. So just to have a full holistic conversation about these things and to make sure that we are funding programs like the Office of Violence and Prevention, to make sure that those things have resources and are consistently invested in, and that we also as a community are being patient while these things take results, because culture, you can't legislate culture. Those things don't change overnight. You can't legislate, you know, shifts in mindsets. That takes time and that takes consistent investment.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
I would agree with the things that both of my colleagues said, and knowing, again, that's why I spoke about the role that I understand that I play in support of the mayor and her administration and the choices they're making, which I love that they bring people on the ground to the table and then not just talk to them, but resource them, because that is important. We can have these conversations all we want, but if they don't have the tools and resources that they need to go out when we leave this table and do the work, then it's all for naught. So I definitely want to make sure that I come in and still stand in full solidarity and support of the work that you all continue to do, that we don't hear about. You know, we always hear about what's not being done, but we know for sure that the work is being done. There's no one thing, like I said, that's going to answer this problem. And as a mother, again, of 5, of juveniles. I think that one thing that we can't talk about is not in our purview, and I get that, but it's the real, some of the disconnect here is the juvenile system. We trying to work with our detention facilities. We trying to work with our penal system. You know, we want reform in all those places, but we need reform in that juvenile system. And I'm saying that not only as a mother, but as a victim now of juvenile crime, and seeing what the police, again, when you talk about hands being tied, what they can do and cannot do when we move forward with that. And that is where I think a ball is being dropped, because these laws that we're making all play a part in this, but they are reactive. And we need to be proactive on this. So the work that Mission St. Louis down there in that basement are doing with them babies, the work that you do, sis, the work that I know, the way that you all can connect, the way that you can connect with your peers that none of us at this table can connect, right? The way none of us can. All of these have to play important roles, and that's why we all have to stand in our positions and support each other on it, or we're never going to get that done. But I do want to make sure that I say that, because to the Chief's point, I could sit up here and talk all day about that juvenile system and the gaps in that, and to why we're dealing with what we're dealing with today, I think. So I want to make sure that I know that, that you all know that I support all of the work that you all are doing, but then we need to go and get together on this other work to be proactive on it, because it's like Dr. Marty Casey says, it takes time and connection. Time and connection is the only thing that we're going to do to heal a lot of these things. So again, I think that what we'll have to do is continue, right, working and move forward.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, we're going to wrap it up, but I think collaboration is the key. You see that there's a whole wide variety of people here. I think elevating the voices of the people who are on the ground and are directly impacted is important. We don't hear from them enough. We don't showcase them enough. I mean, that's maybe not the right word, but I want to make sure they're there and they're seen and their voices are heard and the things they have to say are heard, because it speaks to the nuance of this. The enforcement is important. I was a cop for 20 years. It's very important. The chief is doing great work in terms of being smart enforcement and target enforcement, but one of the simple examples is if you have someone who is a returning citizen, maybe an ex-felon, they feel dangerous in their community, all the things that Jason said, they feel like they have to have a gun. Now they're caught with that gun and they're arrested because there's a charge for carrying as a felon. What does that mean, right? They may not have been meaning to do anything with that gun. So there's a nuance to this where while people shouldn't do things, the reality of their life and their communities, we don't see that highlighted enough in those communities. Listening to young people, creating spaces, it isn't anything new. It's about really just doing what we should always be doing, sitting down and listening to young people. They will tell us what they want. I think identifying what we mean by young people, we talk about that a lot. This is a wide range. 11 to 13 is different than 15 to 17. So we need to be specific about the groups we're talking about, the type of interventions we're talking about, and whether those resources are available, as Ms. Erica says. And then we need to be mindful of the law enforcement and the trauma that is inflicted upon them in working in communities and every day trying to fight for people that they see and they feel don't have a voice, and the things that they see every single day. Because if we don't have healthy health officers, we don't have good enforcement, to the chief's point earlier. So I think all of those are the themes that I take out of this. And I take out of this that we're going to continue to do all the things that we need to. We have a toolbox that has multiple tools in it, and we're going to make sure we deploy all of those tools, and we're going to do a better job of making sure people know what we're doing, as opposed to just putting our heads down and doing the work, because that's what we feel is most important. So I want to hand it to the mayor. I know we're going to stand up, and mayor's going to have some final thoughts, and then we're going to take some questions. Yep, so.
Great, thank you, Will. And I just want to wrap this up really quickly and just thank everyone for their participation and for their honesty this morning to let us know where some of the gaps are. And we will work hard to make sure that we fill those gaps and also continue to have this conversation. This isn't just a one-time thing. We will continue to work together. I want to thank our chief for all of his hard work in the less than 9 months that he's been on the job. He's making a difference. But we all do know that these things work together. It has to be a healthy balance of prevention, intervention, and enforcement. So thank you, and give us a minute to wrap up, and we'll start the press conference. Okay?
Okay, so we're going to move into the front so the mayor can take questions and everybody else can just stand behind her.
I want to thank everyone again for being here this morning. First off, I want to thank the survivors and advocates for joining us here this morning to share their powerful stories. My eyes have been open to a lot of work that's been going on in the community, and I want to thank particularly Erica Jones. Where are you, Erica? Hi, Erica. I want to thank her for lifting up the work that she's been doing in the community with mothers. I was particularly struck by the story she talked about when she said that, there is no word for when a mother loses their child. And as a mom, I can't imagine the pain that mothers feel in this situation. But gun violence is a plague, and its painful touch has stung families across our region, and their experiences are sadly not unique in our city. I've been open about how gun violence has affected my family. The 7-year-old who accidentally shot himself just a few weeks ago was my cousin, and now my family is dealing with a dual crisis: the pain of burying our baby and the overwhelming despair of his grandfather. Second, I want to recognize the families and victims of this weekend's gun violence, as well as the police department officers and detectives, fellow first responders, and community violence intervention groups working to bring them justice and healing, or bringing justice and healing to their neighborhoods. Gun violence takes a terrible toll on our communities. On average, 1,351 people die from guns in Missouri each year. And the powerful stories we heard from survivors here today underscores the devastating cost of gun violence in our city. But the Missouri legislature has stripped safety regulations off the books, flooding our streets with guns. Since the legislature repealed permit to purchase laws in 2007, Missouri's gun homicide rate jumped by at least 47%, according to Johns Hopkins University. Plus, their strict preemption laws tie our hands at the local level, stopping us from implementing many laws that other states and cities use. We're using every tool at our disposal to protect families from gun violence. These methods include enforcement, community violence intervention, supporting victims through services to stop cycles of violence, and the economic development programs that we're putting out in the community that brings everyone forward. In 2023, the police department has already taken more than 1,660 guns off of our streets. And despite the state's strict preemption laws, we're getting creative to make a difference where we can. Board Bill 29 was a start, but we believe we can go even further and give our police more tools. So in the coming days, in partnership with the mayor's office, the aldermen joining us here today, will introduce common sense gun safety legislation to prohibit military-grade weapons on our streets, prevent the transfer or sale of guns to minors, take action on ghost guns and similar untraceable firearms, prepare St. Louis for the passage of Blair's Law, and prohibit insurrectionists and those convicted of hate crimes from having guns. The aldermen you see here standing today represent wards across St. Louis from north to south. We may not always agree on everything, but we do agree on this. Gun violence is a public health crisis that impacts families and communities in every neighborhood across our city. We're coming together around a shared vision, stronger St. Louis that's ready to stand up for our values. And we've seen the state try to fight back against the city time and time again, and we expect them to stop us this time. But we know Missourians are demanding state-level action to pass measures like red flag laws and background checks. But we're ready to fight like hell at the local level to prevent gun violence, protect our babies, and to keep our communities safe. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions you have.
Chief Tracy, this question is for you. Of the things that the mayor spoke about tackling, in the reality of the gun violence on the streets, is the problem what she's talking about here, or is it something different types of guns, other issues that are going on?
Well, each area is experiencing gun violence throughout the United States, so St. Louis is not unique in what we're doing. And how we approach that, I think we talked a lot about it. Intervention, prevention, holistically looking at it, trying to get to these issues before they become problems, and when they do come problems, giving choices out of the life of violence, and then making sure that those with the highest propensity of violence, we're leveraging technology, good detective and police work, and making sure we take some of the people that are violent off the street so they're not going to shoot or harm anybody again. So looking at the type of technology, there's people called trigger pullers out there. They're the ones that are firing the weapons, and we can tell who they are by tracing these firearms and tracing and using evidence on shell casings and matching and doing correlation, and then we narrow it down. And so we don't have to arrest the whole community to get the few that are causing the violence. So that builds the trust in the community, and the community starts to come forward as we have these conversations here. As we work together, they start seeing the police as part of the community, and then they'll come forward and we'll make sure we all keep it safe. And that's how you start to bring things together. We've gone through an unprecedented time. We've gone through a few years of lockouts, disruptions, and things that have happened every city's seen. And then we've also had the aftermath of the George Floyd murder. And we had the civil unrest, and rightfully so, what's happened in a lot of cities. So we're coming out of that. And coming out of it, we have an opportunity here. And these type of things that we're having, talking with all stakeholders, putting sensible gun laws in place and trying to get ahead of things, and some things might get knocked down, but at least we're getting the conversation going. Because we're going to take forward in this city every tool in the toolbox we're making available, like the mayor said. And that overall, it's not just one thing, Rachel. It's a lot of things together in a comprehensive plan coming together. And that's what my job as a police chief, that's as the CEO, as from the city, the mayor and the administration, and then our elected officials and our other stakeholders in trying to keep this city safer. And most of all, the community is coming together. And I'm going to give a statistic out. Less than 0.5% in almost every city, and I've done audits in 4 cities, and I've already done consulting in others, are committing 60 to 70% of the violent crime. So thinking about that. We don't have dangerous neighborhoods. We have a few percentage of dangerous people in those neighborhoods. So let's make sure we try to get them the help, but if they don't want to accept the help, we got to make sure that we're taking care of and making sure that they don't commit more violence in the city, carrying those firearms. And then the whole neighborhoods become safer because the percentage of people. Let's not arrest everyone to get the few that's doing that, and that builds the trust. Like I said, I could talk about this for a couple of hours, the whole crime strategy, but to sum it up there's a lot of things in place that I've talked about in place that we're doing. But you know what? This is what's going to get us there. Community engagement and having this conversation is going to give us long-term sustainable success. I might be able to get with strategy short-term success, but overall, this is where it all happens.
Chief Tracy, do you have a comprehensive plan to help fight crime? And if you have a comprehensive plan, is there someplace that we can read about it?
Yeah, we should have something up. One of my other things is about communication. So you come in a layered approach, you come into a new place, you try to look at things where we can improve, keep doing the things that are doing well, These brave men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department are doing a tremendous job. They were doing a tremendous job before I got here. I'm so proud of them. We're actually down in homicides from where we were last year, almost about 20%, and we're almost down 70 homicides from where we were 3 years ago. They're getting the job done, and we're doing it with the community, and the clearance rates is up well in the mid-70s. For an urban city, that means the community is coming together with us, helping us build cases, coming forward, saying it's not acceptable, and we're making arrests on individuals that are causing harm in this community. So the comprehensive strategy on our website, I already have one. I'm ready. It's going onto the website, and then we can talk about it further. What you've been hearing is me talking about it. I wanted to get out in front of the people. I've been to dozens of community meetings. I might not have been able to you can't get the whole comprehensive strategy in a snippet in front of the press, but when I go to community meetings and I'm there for 2 hours and I go several nights a week, I'm taking it right to the communities and I'm speaking about them. So right now, I will put that comprehensive strategy out so you can read all the way down what we're looking to do and the things that we're going to look to do in the future and build off them. One of the things is group violence intervention. Thomas App bringing in Office of Violence Prevention with Director Will Pickney. There's so many things. It's a holistic plan. I will hit on all those things, and that should be up on the website because I wanted to put that layered approach because I'm fixing the website as well. It would be the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department website. I'm going to have that out. There's been talks, technology. I'm looking at everything from every angle as far as trying to get that information out to everyone. So it should be up there. If it's not out already, it should be out there shortly. I already have it written up so everybody can see. I'll see how I can get that out to everyone. All right?
Mayor Jones, Chief just mentioned some of these ideas may not work, but it gets a conversation started. Do you see this as threading a legal needle, specifically on some of these new measures, or is it really just about kind of getting it out there into the courts and letting the courts figure it out?
No, absolutely, we've been threading the legal needle. We have an excellent policy department in the mayor's office that has been looking feverishly at all of our gun laws and finding where the loopholes are. And so the legislation that the aldermen will be filing in coming days are things that are not currently covered in state legislature. Does that mean that they won't try to pass things later on? Absolutely, or sue us? Absolutely. But again, you know, the state legislature has us fighting crime with our hands tied behind our backs. And so with the one hand free that we do have, we're going to fight like hell.
Mayor Jones, with this
Yes.
legislation, we're talking about keeping guns off the streets. What about people who are trying to obtain them illegally, getting them illegally, and then causing problems? How can you try to enforce that?
So, Chief.
So I talked about the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, and we're one of the few cities that have a NIBIN machine, National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, and then we do E-Trace. So we can start tracing guns anytime they come to custody, who we brought them off. We trace them, find out where they were bought, and then we go back to see that straw purchasing that you're talking about. Buying guns legally, then transferring illegally. Every city, every part of the nation has that issue. So we have a good partnership with the ATF. We work closely. We have task force members in the ATF, and plus the Crime Gun Intelligence Center. We take that seriously. Even when a gun is stolen, sometimes it's not really stolen. Sometimes it's being resold, and we look at every one of those cases. So it's one of those things you got to work within the federal law to try to minimize, called straw purchasing, what you were asking. And you know what, we do take that very seriously on every gun that we trace.
All right, we got about time for one and a half more questions on guns and gun legislation.
Mayor, what qualifies as a military-grade weapon?
An AK-47 or an AR-15, yes.
We've been focusing a lot about youth in the city over the summer, specifically those youth safe spaces. I know school year starting, there's some pullback on that. We talked about the importance of offering that to the youth. Are there plans to continue that, giving that consistency to kids here in the city?
Yes, absolutely. We're putting together a schedule. It may not be every week, it may be once a month. Going forward into the school year, because we realize that we can't wear out the resources of the volunteers that have been helping us. So we'll go to once a month during the school year or for special events, and then go back to, hopefully go back to weekly once school lets out in the summer again.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Mayor, any comment about the hostage situation at the Justice Center this morning?
Spoke to Chief Coyle this morning, and the detainees are back in their cells. And I want to thank the swift action of the police department to assist with the corrections officers to get this situation under control. And the corrections officer who was injured is receiving medical attention.
All right, thanks, everyone. Chief Coyle will have more information for everyone at 2 p.m. later today, so we'll see all you again.